Hi, everyone, and welcome back to One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. As you know, we have been doing like a recap, bringing back some people that I had interviewed maybe 2 to 3 years ago. This lady that you're about to hear her incredible story, I interviewed her about 3 years ago, and she had one of the highest rates of downloads on my podcast. Her story is incredible. You won't believe how I met this lady. I met her through a Facebook Live. She reached out to me. She is from Alabama, and she reached out to me through a Facebook Live and said, "Hey, your ministry is really touching my life and my kids. I just want to share a little bit of my story with you." And I had just actually started doing the podcast. And I was like, "Dana, I am so glad you reached out. I want to share your story with the world." I hope you guys are blessed by Dana's story, and let me know what you think, okay? Hi, this is One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. I pray that today one voice will be a blessing to you. And above all else, I pray that God's voice will be heard among this God's story. Enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And you guys, I have such a special guest with us today. I met this lady through Facebook, and she has an amazing testimony. We have actually built a relationship just talking back and forth, and she read my book and she heard about the ministry of One Voice. And so she reached out to me, and we have just created a friendship ever since then. And I just love this lady. And you guys know that One Voice Makes a Difference is all about giving a voice to those that have been wounded, been hurt, maybe childhood wounds, childhood hurts, or trauma of any kind. And we just want to talk about how the Lord can heal the brokenhearted. No matter what you go through in life, God can heal you. He is powerful. He is an almighty physician. He is the almighty counselor. He is the Prince of Peace. And He is in the middle of your pain. He is in the middle of your story. He was at the beginning of your story, and He's at the end of your story. And I just declare today that what God has started in you, that He will finish it. And I have even seen that in Dana's life. I want you guys to welcome Dana Marie Vines to this podcast. Hey, Dana, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Well, it's not actually morning. Well, it may be morning for somebody that's listening to it. But it is such a pleasure to have you on here and for you to share your story. So I just want to jump right in it, because your story is just really going to minister to so many people. We share a lot of the story, and as you guys know, you've been listening to this podcast for a long time now. You know my story of the sexual abuse that I went through as a child, and abandonment and foster care, and my journey of healing, and what God has done for me, and how He's given me a voice to reach out to other people to bring healing to their hearts. And this was our connection. So now I just want to open up the floor to Dana, and I want her to begin to tell you a little bit about her story. So Dana, tell us a little bit, what was your home life like when you were a little girl?
I grew up with my mom and dad until I was about 12, and they got divorced. I have 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters, and we moved a lot. We moved probably 26 times. I think I added it up from kindergarten to 12th grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
I went to 11 different schools, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Out of 12 years, so that's enough trauma all by itself. So were you raised in a Christian home?
My grandmother, both my grandparents were Christians. My mother took me to church for a couple of years when I was younger, but at an early age, we did not go to church. I guess we moved all the time. It was hard to find a church. My dad was not a Christian at all until right before he passed away.
Okay. So you've had some abuse and some abandonment in your life, and it's taking you a long time to actually come out and tell people what you have been through. And part of the ministry that we have here and even in our church is that, the word says confess so that you can be healed. And the moment that you stop hiding your secrets, and because secrets create darkness, and darkness creates depression, it gives the enemy a foothold in your life. And we have found that the moment that we confess those things, and we bring those things that are in secret, hiding, and things in the darkness, and we bring it to the light, then it opens the doors for the Lord to heal us, to come in and really heal us of all the issues that we have gone through, and all of the pain of abuse and abandonment. So I just want you to know that I'm so proud of you. It's a very courageous thing that you are doing, and to share your story with us. You've already shared with me, but I want the world to know what God has done in your life. And people can't really know the power of healing and what God can do until they know the power of your brokenness and what your brokenness did to you, And a lot of people don't want people to know their brokenness because, it's shameful and it hurts. And we just want to keep that to ourselves. We don't want people to know about it. But you read my book, and after you read my book, you were like, oh my gosh, you felt something inside of you, and you're like, I need to get in touch with this lady, and I need to contact her. And we begin to talk a little bit. And here we are, a year later?
A year and a half.
A year and a half later, and you're on my podcast. So I'm just really excited about it. So Dana, tell us, when did your abuse start?
My very first memory of the abuse, I was 4.5 years old. And we were moving into a house, and a family member approached me and asked me to go into the bathroom with him. And I did. And that's when he began fondling me and really just introducing to me to, a male's body parts. And
at 4.5 years old.
4.5 years old, yes.
Mm-hmm. So what happened after that?
Well, we were still in the act, and my mother came through the house looking for him, and she started calling his name. And he was like, get your pants up and don't you say a word. And there were 2 doors to the bathroom. So he's like, I'm going to go out this bathroom. You're going to go out that bathroom door. So I said, okay. And before we could get out the doors, my mother had met us at one of the doors, and she called us and wanted to know what we were doing. And she was very upset. So I did. At first, I assume I looked like a deer in headlights, because part of me felt like it was okay, and then there was a part of me that knew what was going on wasn't right. Mm-hmm. But when he told me, be quiet, I knew that there was a problem. Mm-hmm. So she started screaming and yelling at us and telling us, asking us what we were doing, and I told her. And she took us to her bedroom, and there was a slat to the bed that she was putting together. And she took that slat and beat me and him both with the slat and told us she better not ever see that happen again.
Wow. I can't imagine that, you're 4.5 years old and you didn't ask for it, but yet, you were introduced to that. And then on top of that, you were punished for it. So I can only imagine what your 4.5-year-old mind was thinking. So did he stop after that? Was that enough for him? Did the beating do anything to him to make him stop, or did he keep on?
No, unfortunately, it did not stop. He continued repeatedly, mm-hmm. all the way until I was 15 years old.
Wow. So from what I understand, it was more than just one person too. There was multiple people involved.
Yes, there's another family member that eventually took part maybe a year or so later. He was older than the other one, but I don't know why it took a while, but about a year or so later, he decided to take part. And at first, it was just molestation, just fondling in the middle of the night, almost every night. I mean, it was very, very constant.
Wow. Over and over.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to put out some statistics really quick. Statistics say that 1 out of every 4 girls is molested or raped before the age of 12. And it's usually 80% of them are by family members or someone they know. And it's never reported, and they're never thrown into jail. They don't spend not even 1 day in jail. And so we just want to bring recognition to that. And the more we bring recognition to it, the more healing that can flow, in our lives. So our motto here is just, hey, if something is happening to you, you need to tell somebody. And you need to tell mom or dad. And if mom or dad don't believe you, or if they get mad at you and beat you, then you need to find a teacher. You need to find a pastor, somebody that you can listen to that can help you. So Dana, was there a shifting? Because I think that at one point you were raped. So how old were you when that happened?
The very first time I was raped, I was 9 years old.
By the same person?
Yes.
Okay. Because usually they prep you for a really long time. They are getting you ready for what they want to do to you. And so how did you feel after that? What did that make you feel like as a 9-year-old? That's so young.
Yeah, I really just shut down. I didn't have any friends. I didn't talk to anybody because I had already tried to tell, and my mother didn't believe me. Mm-hmm. So when that happened, I just shut down. I was numb to the fact of what was going on. I thought it was my fault. Mm-hmm. And so I just let whatever happened happen.
Okay. So is your dad involved in your life? Was he at any point then?
My mom and dad were together until I was 12. So at this point, during the first rape, he was at home. It happened at night.
Right.
So I don't know why I never went to my dad. I'm not sure. My dad was not a very nice man. Mm-hmm. He was mentally abusive. I never saw him physically hit my mom, but he was very verbally abusive and emotionally abusive. Mm-hmm. And he was physically abusive to some of the children in the home, not myself. He never whipped me, but some of the kids he did.
So a lot of times people don't talk about it because it becomes their normal. So when you are abused, especially under the age of 6 years old, that becomes your normal. So you don't even know that it is abuse. You don't even realize. You're thinking, because you're growing and you're learning from your environment. And so as children, you don't know how to tell people. So I think it's really important as parents that, listen, it's never too young to talk to your children. I mean, the moment they start school or preschool, you need to let them know, listen, nobody touches you here. Nobody does this to you. And if they do, you tell me. You tell your teacher right away. And it's important that you tell somebody, because the moment you begin to tell somebody, it makes a difference. And you have to teach your children, this is not right. This is painful. This is going to hurt you. But I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to be honest with you. Back in the day when we were little, nobody talked about it. I mean, people are just now starting to talk about it if you really want to know the truth about it. And so, we didn't talk about it then. It just become our normal. But then you grow up and you think, and you start looking at other people's lives and you're going, no, this was not normal, what I went through. So, gosh, Dana, you were 9 years old. You got raped for the first time. So what happened after that? What was the environment back, like after that?
The abuse just continued. I got depressed. I looked, like you said, I looked around looking at other people's lives, and I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know who to tell. I didn't know what to say. Eventually, I did go back to my mother again, and I told her it was happening. And she told me to go play. All I wanted was attention and to just go play. So I just acted like it never happened.
And you were 9 years old then?
9 years old. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what happened after that?
The Lord sent me my fourth grade teacher came into my life, and she offered to take me to church on Sundays. So she would take me to church every Sunday during this time. And this is when things got really bad, when I was raped. So I truly believe that her being in my life brought God, it brought God into my life, because she taught me who God was in fourth grade.
Yeah.
But I never told her either. I didn't tell her what was going on, but she took me to church from fourth grade till seventh grade.
Wow.
And the abuse just kept getting worse. I caught them one of them doing the same thing to my little sister. I have two younger sisters. And I tried to tell my mom about that, and she didn't believe me.
Wow.
My younger sister was 2 at that time. So I just held it all in, and it just got worse. And then at 12 years old, I tried to kill myself.
What happened?
I took a whole bunch of pills, and I didn't tell anybody. I don't even know what I took. I just took them, and I slept for a couple of days. Nobody even noticed that Dana was not up walking around.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. And you never told anybody?
No. I was done.
At some point, did you go to a church camp? What happened where you realized there was something really shifted in your life?
At 14, my uncle paid for us to go to a youth retreat. It was a weekend youth retreat at a local church. And he was big into the church. And every summer he would say, I'm paying for all the nieces and nephews to go. And he would.
Wow.
So he shipped us off, which not everybody wanted to go, but I wanted to go. So I went to this youth retreat, and they were talking about premarital sex and how you can catch STDs and how you can get pregnant. And nobody had ever talked to me about that. I had no clue what could happen. And I had previously been raped very badly by the other family member. And it was a very bad experience.
So hang on, you had 2 different family members abusing you, molesting you, and raping you. And you tried to tell, but nobody would listen to you. They would say, go play, you just want attention. Yes. I want you guys to hear this, because this is happening. And there's a lot of women that are walking around that this has happened to. And if this has happened to you, I want you to know right now that the Holy Spirit is right there with you, and He wants to reveal the pain in your heart that you've been carrying around and healing. He wants, there's healing flowing down from the throne room of heaven right now. And the Lord is just going to touch you in a place that you've never been touched before, and just deep in your spirit, and heal you of the woundedness of your past, just like He has Dana through this testimony. The word says that we overcome the enemy by the power of our testimony when we begin to tell people what has happened to us. But it seems like, Dana, you kept telling people, but nobody was listening. But then you had the ears of someone, a counselor maybe at this camp that you went to. Did you tell the leader of the camp what was happening?
Yes. So we were there for the whole weekend, and before we left, she gave us all her address. She was still in college. She was a young lady, 18, 19 years old, but she was in college, and she gave us all her address and said, y'all can write me, so let's stay in touch. So I didn't tell her while we were there. I waited till I went home, and I wrote her a letter, and I told her what was going on. I didn't use the words rape. I didn't use the word molestation. I used the fact that I was scared I was going to get pregnant. So she wrote me back and she said, Dana, I don't know what to do. She said, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Let me talk to the pastor of the church and I'll get back with you. So we wrote back and forth, and she wrote me back and she said, the pastor told me to call DHR. And is that okay? Because I can get you help if I call them. So I wrote her back and told her, yes, I just wanted it to stop. I just wanted help.
Wow. So what happened after that?
DHR got involved. We were picked up at school. I was picked up at school this particular day. My mother never checked me out of school. My mother was never home, ever home. And so to see her during the day was very odd. So to be checked out of school was even more weird. So she checked me out of school and we went to DHR and they talked to me and my sisters, and they gave my mother a choice that she could either keep us girls and make sure that these predators were not back at her house, or she could let us all three go to foster care. So since my youngest sister was only 4 at the time, she said she would just let us stay home and make sure that the predators never came around our house until the investigation was finished. So we went through like a year, maybe almost a year of investigating. I started counseling. We had mom-daughter counseling, I had personal counseling, and then we had family counseling with the family members. And the case was getting closed. Everybody had completed counseling. Everybody was rehabilitated. We were good to go. And they had allowed my mother to have whoever she wanted back in the home again. So this particular weekend, those same family members were back in our home staying the night, and it happened again.
And how old were you then?
I was 15.
Wow. And did they ever threaten you?
Yes, actually, after this incident, I did not tell my mother. I did not tell my father. I didn't tell anybody. I knew I was going back to counseling that next week. So I waited until I went to counseling, and I told my counselor what was happening. And she said, we're going to have to tell your mother. And I said, she's not going to believe me. But so she called my mother in the room, and I told my mother what had happened. And she didn't believe me. So then they called all of the family members into the room, and my counselor told them why we were all in the room together. And she said that she would be reporting it to DHR as soon as the counseling session was over. And this particular family member screamed at me and said, if I go to jail over this, I'm going to kill you.
Wow. So what happened after that? That must have made you feel like just giving up. And so
yeah. So when he said that, I said, you know what? You're not going to have to. I'll kill myself. You're not going to kill me.
Wow.
So the counselor ran everybody out of the room, and she and I talked, and she's like, Dana, you're really not going to do that. I'm like, I really will. If you send me home with them, I'm going to kill myself. There's nothing going to stop me this time.
Wow.
So she sent me to Children's Hospital, to the psychiatric ward.
Wow. And what did they do?
They put me in some extensive counseling, interviewed me, realized I was very depressed. They offered family counseling there, but my mother, I don't remember my mother ever coming. Maybe once. I was there 3 weeks. My dad came one time. My mother came one time for visitation. My mother came for one family counseling session. And then that's all I remember. I had a friend from school that had been taking me to church. He was a cute boy that invited me to church. And that cute boy ended up being my foster brother. But,
oh, wow.
Yes, but he was a preacher boy, and everybody made fun of him, but he always brought hope, So because he was a preacher or a licensed minister, he was able to come visit me while I was in the hospital.
Wow.
And he and his family had been taking me to church on Sundays. So he came in to let me know they were praying for me. And so I just stayed there for 3 weeks until I finally came to grips with, what was going to happen. They decided through DHR and my counselors, they were not going to send me back home. So they sent me to my mom's sister's house, my aunt's house, to live. So that was my first placement in foster care.
Did you ever go live with your dad at any point?
I did. So while I was living with my aunt, that was in July. So around September, my mother had visitation, and she kept telling me that my aunt wanted to adopt me, and she can't believe I was turning my back on her, and how if she adopted me, all these things were going to change. And so I got scared, and I asked DHR to let me go back home. I told them I wanted to go back home to my mother. So I went back home to my mother until that January. My sister, her birthday was in January. She had to spend the night party, and it happened again.
Wow.
So
it was just like a never-ending nightmare, just going on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
So after that time, was that the last time it happened?
That was the last time, because I was permanently removed from the home.
And he was actually raping you every time?
Well, this time it was just the molestation, I guess to see what they could get away with.
Right.
To see if I was going to say anything. So I did. I told, and there was a big blow up. And then this particular Sunday happened, and I wanted to go to church, and my mother told me I couldn't go to church. So I went to church anyways. My mother came home from her boyfriend's house early, and she called me at church. And when I came home from church, she cussed at me, was very upset that I was at church, and told me I was never going to church again, that those people have brainwashed me, and that I was not going to church anymore. And I ran away from home that night.
So your parents actually divorced at some point in between there?
Yes.
How old were you when they divorced?
I was 12.
12. So now you're about 15. And you ran away from home. So what happened after you ran away from home?
I just went next door, but my mother didn't know that. So the cops found me. I went next door, and I called the family that had been taking me to church. And I told them that my mother was mad because I was at church and I was not going back home. I hated her. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't live with her anymore. And I told them what had happened, and I was still in counseling. So I paged my counselor. Back then they had beepers, and told her 911 I needed help. So she had called the law to come to my neighbor's house. My mother had called the law to go to our house because I ran away. And then the church family that took me to church called the law to come to their house. And they were in communication with my father. So my father is a very ignorant man, and that's not to be disrespectful at all. He couldn't read, he couldn't write. He was very ignorant. So he loved us kids, I believe, in his own way. He just did not know how to do anything about it, So they were trying to help him get custody of us children anyways at that point, the family that was taking me to church. So the cops came to my neighbor's house and took me back home and told me to go to bed and don't talk to anybody. Don't look at my mother. Do not disrespect her. If they have to come back out there again, they would take me to juvenile. They were very rude. They threw me in the back of the cop car. They cussed at me. And I was like, look, you don't have to cuss me. I just want to go to church. That's all I wanted. So I went to bed that night, and I cried myself to sleep. And didn't know what the next day held. He said that my mother would take care of me tomorrow. So I got up the next morning before anybody else in the house woke up. I walked down to the bus stop. I was probably there at 6, and the bus didn't even run until 7:15. And I sat there waiting on the bus.
Wow. That's crazy. So what happened after that?
My mother came to check me out of school, and she took me to juvenile. And she was going to put me in juvenile because I was uncontrollable. And this little old Black lady, she was the sweetest little thing. She interviewed me for over an hour and a half, and then she interviewed my mom, and then she called us both back in there together. And she looked at my mother and she said, "Miss Smith," she said, "Dana doesn't need juvenile. She just needs love. And we're going to send her to live with her dad." So my mother left me there, and I sat on the intake bench with my suitcase of clothes, and I had to wait 2 hours for my dad to get there because he lived about 2 hours away from where we were from. So I went to live with my dad.
Wow. So after you went to live with your dad, you have all of these emotions. I'm sure you're confused about love, confused about if I'm good or bad, what's wrong with me. So many questions are probably arising in your heart. And now they're going to send you back to school, with all of this. And this is like a hard time anyway. So when you went to live with your dad, did you go back to school? What happened then?
Well, actually, fortunately for that situation, they had just passed a law where if you did not have custody of your children, you could not put them in school. So my dad took me to put me in school that following Monday, and they would not let him because I guess it was a mutual decision between my parents that I would just live with him. So I was 15, and I decided that I told my dad, I said, "Look, don't worry about it, Dad. I'll just quit school. It's fine. When I turn 16, I'll go get my GED. It's fine."
Wow.
And my dad argued because I was an AB honor roll student and never made a C. And he said, "No, Dana, you're too good of a kid. You're the only kid I've got that's going to do anything. I need you to go to school." And I said, "It's fine. It'll be fine, Dad. It'll be fine." So I quit school. I was 15, and I said, "Nobody will ever know. I'll be 16 by next year when school starts. Nobody will know." So I just lived with my dad, and he lived with his sister. It was a very poverty-stricken environment. But I just lived there until April that year.
Then eventually, did you go back to school or no?
I did. The family that was from our hometown that had been taking me to church was in connection with the school that I had come from. We changed schools a lot, but this is the school I had been at the most. So they had talked to the principal there, and he told them that if my dad could get me back to that side of town, that he would let me finish out that school year and make up all the work I had missed just so I wouldn't fail. And that would give my dad more time to get his stuff straight so I could get back in school that next year.
Right.
So they offered my father and I a travel trailer to live in on their property.
Wow.
And so we moved in the travel trailer. And my dad worked for the father of that household. And I went to school.
Wow.
So I made up all the work I missed from January to April. And I did all that in April and May. And
did you have to stay after school to do stuff too?
I stayed after school every day. I had the best teachers. My teachers never complained. So I took one class at a time and just stayed after school and made up all that work and ended up passing that year with all A's and B's.
Wow. I just want to take my hat off to all the teachers out there because I want you to know that you are making a difference in the lives of these children. The love that you show and, the concern that you have for their lives, even though you may not have the power to change their circumstances, you are changing the way they think and the way they view life, and you're giving them hope. So there was a teacher and a counselor that made a difference in my life, and a pastor, just these little seeds that you plant, and along the way, they never forget about it. So, to all my teachers, I just want to say, keep on keeping on. All of my pastors and youth pastors, keep pouring into those kids, because you are making a difference. You are impacting their lives so strong that you really don't even realize the power of the positive words that you are speaking over their lives, and the love that you show them. It's creating atmosphere for them to have hope and to believe. So I just wanted to stop a moment, Dana, and just give honor to pastors and to teachers and counselors, these people that have just poured into your life. What a difference that they made in your life. So I remember you telling me that you went back to school, and then what happened after that? You had your dad just, I don't know what happened to him. Something just shifted inside of him, and then it rocked your world. So can you tell everybody else what happened then?
Yeah, so the day came to go pick up our report card from that school year, and my dad took me to school to pick up my report card. And when he got back, it was a Friday, June 3rd. And when he got back, he told me he went back home, which was a couple hours away, every other weekend to see his girlfriend, or every weekend. Mm-hmm. And I would just stay there and go to church at the friend's house. Mm-hmm. And so he told me, he said, I'm going to go see my girlfriend. I'll be back Sunday. And when Sunday came, he just never came back.
Wow. He just left you there.
Yes.
So what did you do?
I just stayed there. I mean, we gave it a couple weeks because it was summer. So after a couple weeks of me calling and him not answering and talking to his family and nobody giving me any answers, the Harts, Deborah and Walter Hart are their name, the family, they came to me and they said, Dana, we're going to have to move you in the house. We can't leave you out here in a travel trailer by yourself. So they had 2 boys, and so they made their boys share a bedroom so I could have my own room, and they moved me in their house, and they just took care of me until I graduated high school.
And these were pastors?
They were pastors of a local church, yes.
Wow, that's amazing. And they were good to you?
Yes, they were amazing. I never knew what it was like to have a mom to cook dinner and to be there when you come home from school, and to have someone to talk to, and a father who didn't scream and yell and fuss and cuss every breath. Walter was very aggravating, but other than that, he was wonderful. The brothers, they were mean to me, but in a brother and sister way, not, in a bad way.
Yeah.
So it was just great to be a part of a real family, I guess, and to learn what unconditional love was.
Wow. That's amazing. So after all of this happened and you're growing up, I know that you got married and you've been through a divorce. And I also see that now you are taking in other children, some of your family. They're not your own, but you've taken them in, you're taking care of them just in the same way that people took care of you. I see you now doing the same thing to others, and you're bringing love to their hearts. You're making a difference in their lives because of the love. But what triggered you to decide to lean into some healing, and you knew that you needed healing from all of this? What happened? How was your walk with the Lord during all of these years after adolescence and after high school?
In my early adult age, I still went to church all the time because church was a safe place, but I wasn't living for God. I did drugs, I drank, I had sex, I did it all. But I met my knight in shining armor at 24, married. We were divorced 6.5 years later due to an abusive marriage. When I divorced him, found myself with no family. I was too embarrassed to call my foster family and tell them I was, divorced, because you're not supposed to divorce, right? Or that's how the church believed back then.
Yeah.
So I was too embarrassed to call them. And we were pretty much homeless. We ended up living above a business for 18 months, thanks to a friend of a friend of a friend. And they let us live there. And it was rough. The instability that I grew up with, I continued to put off on my children. The insecurities I had, I couldn't keep a job. I didn't have any confidence. I didn't have any self-esteem. It just affected me in so many different ways. I didn't know how to rise above my past. And it wasn't until my mother passed away 3 years ago. And when she passed away, I didn't think it would affect me, because I hated her. I didn't care about her. But 10 days before she passed, she looked me in the eye and she asked me to forgive her for everything. And I remember asking her, "Are you about to die?" Because it was just weird, because we've never had that conversation before. But I really believed she knew she was going to die. And when she passed away the year after that, it'd been about a year, it was just, I was depressed. I don't know why I was depressed. Didn't know why. I know now it was probably a lot of her death. Yeah. And everything else I've been through. And there was no closure. So now my father died 10 years ago. So I've lost both parents. And I can't ever get closure on all this abuse that I went through. There's no closure there. And no reason to say, "Why didn't you believe me?" or "Why didn't you do anything?" or, there was just nothing. So I was really depressed. And I had planned my suicide. I had put, I don't have any family. I want to raise my children. So I had put some friends down on my life insurance policy. I had asked them, if something happened to me, would they take my children? And they said yes. And I knew they would raise them in church. I knew they would take care of them and push them to be the best they could be. And I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. At this point, I had one extra child, which is my niece. So I had a total of 3 children. But when I tried to follow through with it, I could not do it.
Wow.
I'm not going to say I had an epiphany and God came down and spoke to me or anything like that, but I do know the Holy Spirit stopped me from following through with any of those plans. And at that point, I ran across your testimony, not in the same month, but shortly after. Your testimony came across my Facebook page. And I wasn't friends with you. I didn't know who you were, but the testimony was a sponsored ad and it came across and I listened. And at the end you said, if this has touched you in any way, reach out to me.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, she's never going to respond, so I reached out and you responded and you sent me a book. And when I read that book, I started reading the book. I couldn't finish it because it brought up so many memories. And I realized, even though I had been in counseling in the past for the abuse and for all that had happened, there were so many things I never told anybody. And there was so much I never talked about. And there was so much that wasn't really healed. So that's when I decided that I needed some help. I couldn't do it on my own.
Wow, that's awesome. So part of the One Voice ministry is we like to send teenage girls to the Selah retreat in Atlanta, Georgia, under the care of Allison Lusted. And she has a powerful testimony also. And actually her testimony is on one of my podcasts if you want to go back and listen to that. But we decided that we would send some of the kids, your kids, some of the ones that maybe your niece, I guess, to the Selah retreat so they could find inner healing. And you're like, well, I think I need to go. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Y'all all should go. So did the kids end up going too?
They did. I ended up going first.
Okay.
Because the scholarship opportunity you had when you were there, we ended up all getting COVID, so we couldn't go.
That's right.
So it worked out, which I'm glad it did. I ended up going to the retreat first, and it was an amazing experience. I recommend that for anybody, just anything. I mean, it was just amazing. It totally changed my life. And now doing counseling with Allison and Crosspoint Ministries has really brought a difference in my life.
Wow.
So, and then my girls, I took on another foster child a year ago. So I have 2 children, 2 extra children. And so they both ended up going 2 months after I went to the Selah retreat, and it's totally changed their lives as well.
Wow. I just love how God worked all of that out. How it's like he set it up for you. It was just a setup from God, and he's not finished, Dana, setting things up for you. And I love the story of, we were talking earlier today, and you were talking with Allison, and Allison's like, well, we need to get you planted in a church. So how did you find this amazing church that you're in right now? What happened? I mean, because it's just another setup.
Well, it was an accident. I mean, I really stumbled upon it. So my big girls had come home from Selah, and they were on fire for God. And I had just got home from Atlanta from bringing them home at 4:00 in the afternoon. They're like, Dana, take us to church. And I'm like, guys, nobody even has church on Sunday night anymore. I don't know who has church on Sunday night. And they were like, yes, there's got to be somebody. And there's a minister that I follow on Facebook, and her name is Leanne Stewart. And she had posted that she was going to be ministering this particular Sunday night. And I don't know, I know her, but she doesn't know me. And I know her ministry, but we're not tight, right?
Right.
So I told the girls, I said, I'm going to run grab some groceries at the grocery store. And I said, I'm going to message her. And if she'll call me back or message me back, we'll go to this church. It's in Coleman. It's 20 minutes away. And they're like, okay. I said, y'all just get ready. We'll see if she even messages me back. And within 3 minutes, I mean, the church started at 5:30. This is 4:15. This lady texts me back. She goes, yes, I'll be there at 5:30. You should come. Okay. Yes, ma'am. So I get home from the grocery store and I tell the girls, let's go. So we hop in our car. We don't know anybody at this church. I don't know Leanne. I'm just going to, because my kids want to go to church. And if my teenagers want to go to church, I'm going to take them to church. We stumbled upon this little church. And I remember walking in, and one of the greeters, she said, are you here to visit? Or are you here for Leanne? I said, we're just here for Leanne. So we went in, and that night, my girls said, we found us a church. Wow. We want to stay here. And I'm like, you can't do that, guys. You can't make a decision off one night. But we ended up visiting again a couple other times. And by the 3rd time, we all knew that's where we needed to be. We needed to be planted.
You're hooked after the 3rd time. I've always heard that.
Yes.
And you just, had a great relationship with the pastor's wife there. She just reached out to you.
Yeah, so we had some discipleship classes, and she shared her testimony, which is a lot like mine, similar ways. And I reached out to her and was like, I never told her, we have some similar ways. And she told me at one point, she's like, Dana, that verse in Revelations, you're made an overcomer by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. But I remember telling her, just like I've told you many times, I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed by my testimony.
Yeah. Wow.
And so she told me, she said, I could be that way too, but if I was, would it help anybody? So that's when I decided that it was time to put the shame and the embarrassment away and to bring that testimony forth to help others, because her testimony also encouraged me to share mine.
Wow. That is powerful. And now you are on the journey of healing. Do you feel like even now, while you're talking about this, that you feel that the journey has begun and you're or you feel so much better and you feel healed. Tell me, how do you feel right now?
I feel so free right now. It's just amazing. I mean, it was amazing before this, just since being at our church, the freedom that has come. I've talked to Pastor Cherie and Sister Libby about some other things that I was dealing with that I needed deliverance with, and to get the love of God from that,
Mm-hmm.
from them,
Mm-hmm.
and the prayers and the encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought a lot of freedom on itself.
Mm-hmm.
But just being able to share this testimony here and now, I just feel so free. Like, it just feels amazing to just get it all out.
Amen. He that the Son has set free is free.
Free indeed.
Amen. Well, gosh, Dana, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And you guys, all of you that are listening out there, I want you to know that what has happened in Dana's life, what has happened in my life, and so many people's life is available for you too. No matter what kind of trauma you went through, no matter what kind of abuse, just because it happened to you doesn't mean that that is who you are. And there's something about leaning into God. And when you lean into Him, you find your hope in Him and you find healing in Him. And listen, the body of Christ, we are the arms of Jesus. We are His heartbeat and we are His voice. And it's time for us just to go out and wrap our arms around a generation and a people that is hurting and they need love. So I just want to encourage you all. I don't know what side you are on in this journey. Like, if you are the person that's been abused, or maybe you're like, hey, I want to be that one that is reaching out and I want to be touching people's lives. And, wherever you're at, I just want you to know that your voice is powerful. If you're the victim, your voice is powerful because you need to tell somebody what you're going through. And when you tell somebody, it opens the doors in the spirit realm and it begins to break the hold that the enemy has had on you. And, it gives you room in life. It just opens the doors for you to go down a different route, that you can find freedom and you can find hope. And then, like I said earlier, your pastors, your teachers, your counselors, or your people that have overcome the same things, begin to talk about it. Tell people, just love people where they are, and let's bring them all into Christ. And if you want to know more about my ministry, my husband and I, we're pastors at Crossroads Community Church in Statesboro, Georgia. But I have a ministry on the side where we do outreach. It's called One Voice Makes a Difference. My website is www.janetswanson.org. And if you want to help us send kids to the Selah retreat, it's like a $550 fee to send them there. And we also do counseling here at our church. We do mentorship and helping kids get back on the right road, get them back on the right track. And all the money that you would send into us would go to help them. We give books away, we give counseling away, we give t-shirts away, we go into the school system. We really were going into the school system before COVID hit, but now the Lord opened the door for me to do the podcast, and this is the platform that I'm using now just to reach out. So if you want to be a part of that, just go on there and pray about being a monthly donor to the One Voice Ministry so that we can reach more kids. Listen, this is the year, I believe, for healing and salvation. And I've asked the Lord that this would be the year that we would win more souls than we have ever had. Personally, I'm asking God, give me more souls than I've ever won in my entire life this year. And I am ready. I feel like fire shut up in my bones, ready just to go out and get these kids. But you know what? We do it together and we need your help. So I'm just so grateful for God, for all that He has done. And I can't wait, Dana, to see what else God is going to do with you. You have a bright future, my friend. You're a beautiful person inside out.
And I just want to thank you so much for coming on and telling us your story today. And all of you that are listening out there today, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening, whether you're driving in your car, maybe you're getting ready at home, or maybe you're on vacation and you're just doing absolutely nothing and you wanted to hear a podcast. And here we are, we popped up. So thank you for listening today. And I'd just love for you to share this with someone if it's really ministered to you. All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys next week on One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. Take care. God bless.
Thank you for listening to One Voice Makes a Difference. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing and reviewing the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Tell your friends about One Voice too. Your voice helps the show reach more people and to spread the gospel. If you'd like to hear more about my personal story, you can purchase my book, One Voice, on my website, www.janetswanson.org, or on Amazon and audible.com. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. Most importantly, if you're in a crisis, please call 24/7 Crisis Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Don't wait, your life matters.